The neighborhood on Lancaster Boulevard was quiet that night. Streetlights flickered over parked cars, and the soft hum of a distant highway was the only sound breaking the stillness. Inside one small apartment, however, something terrible was unfolding. A light stayed on long after midnight. Neighbors would later recall faint noises, a thud, maybe a muffled cry, then silence. Hours later, a figure emerged, dragging something heavy into the night. He moved quickly, methodically, as if following a plan long rehearsed. By sunrise, the apartment that once held the laughter of 3 young children stood eerily still. The curtains were drawn, the front door locked, and the woman who had fought for years to protect herself and her sons was nowhere to be found. What happened inside that home in the early hours of August 10th would soon unravel into one of Lancaster's most haunting cases. A story of control, fear, and the desperate final act of a man who refused to let go. I'm the narrator, and this is the story of Sheylla Cabrera. When Sheylla Elizabeth Cabrera left Peru, she carried the same hope shared by millions who begin a new life far from home, the hope of safety, stability, and opportunity. She wanted to give her children everything she never had. The move to the United States was not just a change of country, it was a leap of faith. In Lancaster, California, 33-year-old Sheylla had already achieved much of what she once envisioned. She was known as a loving mother to 3 young boys, ages 9, 6, and 4, and a woman who worked tirelessly to provide for them. Friends and neighbors often spoke about her warmth and generosity. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, brought food to others, and still managed to smile through her own challenges. She created a space filled with laughter and love, preparing homemade Peruvian meals for her children, and decorating their modest apartment on Lancaster Boulevard with colorful touches that made it feel like home. But behind that sense of calm and normalcy, something darker was happening. Jossimar Cabrera, her husband, seemed like a caring partner from the outside. He smiled in public, played the role of a father, and gave the impression of a stable family man. Yet behind closed doors, life was very different. Even before moving to the United States, Sheylla had filed a report in Peru accusing him of abuse. Her mother, still living in Lima, recalled that Jossimar had hit her, mistreated her, and even struck their youngest child. Like many women in her situation, Sheylla hoped things might change once they started a new life abroad. Unfortunately, the violence didn't stop. It simply followed her to California. Friends began noticing changes in Sheylla. Her cheerful energy started to fade, replaced by quiet exhaustion. Elizabeth Russo, one of her closest friends, later told investigators that Sheylla felt trapped. Jossimar had threatened to take the children away if she left him, a fear that kept her bound to him for years. It was the vision of her sons growing up in peace, surrounded by love, that kept her going, even as the walls of her marriage closed in around her. By the summer of 2025, Sheylla had made up her mind. The years of abuse had worn her down, and she could no longer live in fear. She began to plan her escape carefully, saving money, talking quietly with friends she trusted, and preparing to file for divorce. She also planned to report Jossimar to the authorities in Lancaster, determined to protect her boys once and for all. On August 9th, she called her parents in Peru and told them everything. She said she was ready to leave and was going to the police. Her voice carried both fear and hope. Fear of what might happen if he found out, and hope that she could finally start over. Her mother remembered that call vividly. It would be the last time she ever heard her daughter's voice. Inside their apartment, the tension was growing. Jossimar knew what was coming. To him, the idea of losing control was unbearable. Friends later said that he seemed distant and angry in the days before Sheylla disappeared. What Sheylla didn't know was that he had already made up his mind. If he couldn't keep her under his control, he would make sure no one else could. August 9th, 2025 would be the last day anyone saw Sheylla Cabrera alive. In the early hours of August 10th, while her children slept nearby, something horrific unfolded inside their Lancaster apartment. The details remain sealed in court documents, but what investigators later pieced together paints a chilling picture of deliberate violence. Prosecutors allege that Jossimar Cabrera murdered his wife inside the home they shared with their 3 sons, using a knife in the attack. This was not a sudden argument or a moment of rage. It was cold, it was calculated, it was final. When the act was over, Jossimar Cabrera faced what came next. The man who had spent years controlling his wife through fear now turned to controlling what would happen to her body. Investigators later said that what followed was not chaos, but a disturbing display of order. He wrapped Shella's body in a large piece of fabric, folding it tightly and securing it to conceal any trace of what he had done. He moved deliberately, not like someone panicking after a sudden act of violence, but like a man following a plan. Neighbors would later recall hearing faint noises during the early morning hour, doors closing, something being dragged, then the sound of a car starting. Around 2:40 a.m., a neighbor returning home from a night shift noticed something odd. Jossimar cleaning the trunk of his silver sedan. She paused, confused. At that hour, there was no reason for anyone to be outside doing that. She had unknowingly seen a man preparing to hide the body of his wife. The defining moment came hours later when detectives recovered footage from a nearby Ring doorbell camera. In the grainy black and white video, time-stamped 4 a.m., a figure could be seen dragging a large, heavy object wrapped in fabric across the pavement. The effort in his movements, the way he struggled to lift it, was unmistakable. That object was Sheylla Cabrera. Moments later, the man lifted the bundle and forced it into the trunk of the car. He closed the lid, walked around to the driver's side, and drove away into the night. His route would take him out of Lancaster and into the dark, winding roads leading toward the AngelesNationalForest, a vast stretch of wilderness that has often been used as a dumping ground for violent crimes. Jossimar drove deep into the forest, navigating through sharp turns and narrow roads until he found a spot hidden from view. There, in the cold, early morning air, he opened the trunk and pulled out the bundle. He dragged Shella's body to the edge of a steep embankment and pushed it over. Her body tumbled down among the rocks and brush, coming to rest in the darkness below. The mother of his 3 children was abandoned like a discarded object. When it was done, Jossimar got back in the car and drove home. Inside the apartment, the boys were still asleep, unaware that their mother would never return. By morning, he began to prepare his next act, the lies. 2 days later, on August 12, 2025, Shella's friends grew desperate. They had not heard from her since August 9th. That silence was unlike her. Worried, her friends went to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to file a missing person report. Deputies were sent to the Cabrera apartment. Jossimar answered the door. He appeared calm, polite, even helpful at first. But as detectives began asking questions, his stories began to shift. At first, he claimed that Sheylla had been detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, a calculated lie designed to discourage immediate investigation. When detectives pressed for details, he changed his story. Now, he said Sheylla had left him for another man. Later, in a third version, he claimed she had been involved in an accident, but offered no specifics. Every new explanation fell apart under even the simplest questioning. Detectives soon realized they weren't speaking to a worried husband. They were speaking to a man trying to hide what he had done. As investigators began to piece things together, friends of Sheylla Cabrera came forward with critical information. They spoke about the years of domestic violence, the countless times she had asked for help, and the fear she lived with daily. They told detectives about her plan to leave her husband and the threats he had made to take the children if she ever tried. The image of a devoted family man that Jossimar projected was crumbling. With his story shifting and the friends' testimonies revealing a history of abuse, investigators understood that this was no longer a simple missing person case. This was a murder investigation in disguise. Detectives began going through every possible clue, checking phone records, traffic cameras, and security systems. Then, on August 13th, just 3 days after Sheylla vanished, came the turning point. The neighbor's Ring doorbell camera had captured the footage from the early morning hours of August 10th. The video showed Jossimar dragging the large, heavy object and loading it into the trunk of his car. That short clip changed everything. What had begun as a missing person report instantly became a homicide investigation. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau took charge immediately. They coordinated with specialized search and rescue teams. Their task was enormous: to search through over 700,000 acres of the Angeles National Forest. Meanwhile, new information made the case even more urgent. Jossimar and the couple's 3 young children were now missing as well. US authorities issued international alerts, fearing he had already fled the country. Leads suggested that he was making his way towards South America. Then, on the morning of August 16th, just after 10 a.m., the radio call every investigator both hopes for and dreads came in. Members of the Montrose Mountain Search and Rescue Team had spotted something down a steep embankment in a remote part of the Angeles National Forest. A bundle of fabric that looked eerily familiar. When homicide detectives arrived, they climbed down to the area. Among the rocks and brush, wrapped in the same kind of material seen in the video, they found the body of 33-year-old Sheylla Cabrera. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The news spread quickly through Lancaster's Peruvian community. Candlelight vigils began forming almost immediately. The community stood together in grief, mourning the loss of a mother, a friend, and a neighbor who had come to America seeking peace, only to meet a violent end at the hands of the man she trusted most. That same day, investigators received word from Peru. The 3 Cabrera children had been located safe and taken into protective custody. They were alive, but their mother was gone, and their father was now an international fugitive. After fleeing the United States, Jossimar crossed international borders, traveling by land and trying to escape capture. He was detained not once, but twice, first in Mexico and later in Peru. Both times he was released because US prosecutors had not yet filed formal charges, meaning foreign governments had no legal reason to hold him. The 3 young children were quickly flown out of Lima and repatriated to Los Angeles, where they were reunited with their maternal grandmother, Helga Rosillo, a heartbreaking reunion where the grandsons were safe, but her daughter was gone forever. Prosecutors in Los Angeles County were moving at full speed. Detectives compiled hundreds of pages of evidence: the surveillance video, witness statements, forensic findings from the apartment, and Shella's history of domestic violence reports. On August 21st, the district attorney's office announced they were charging Jossimar with 1 count of murder, including a special allegation that he had used a knife as a deadly weapon. The following morning, an extradition arrest warrant was issued, and Interpol was officially notified. A red notice, an international wanted alert, was distributed across the world, identifying Jossimar as a fugitive accused of homicide. For nearly 2 weeks, Jossimar remained on the run. But with the red notice active, every move he made became riskier. Finally, on August 27, 2025, Jossimar surrendered himself to authorities. He walked into Interpol headquarters in Lima and turned himself in. Peruvian National Police released footage showing the moment of his arrest. Jossimar standing handcuffed, his expression blank, his head lowered as cameras flashed. He will remain in custody in Lima while the extradition process moves forward. Once approved, he will be transported back to California, where he will face trial for the murder of Sheylla Cabrera. If convicted, Jossimar Cabrera faces a maximum sentence of 26 years to life in prison. Justice for Sheylla Elizabeth Cabrera has begun its long journey home. A journey fueled by the love of a mother who came to America seeking peace, and by a community that refuses to let her story be forgotten. If this investigation resonated with you, please consider hitting the like button and leaving a comment to support the channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more investigations into the truth behind the darkness.